All right, it's 1 o'clock here in the Eastern time zone, and we're going to get started here. We'd like to welcome to the webinar Larry Wilkins from the Alabama Broadcasters Association. Larry has 40 plus years experience in radio and television engineering. He started like a lot of others, including myself, while in high school at a 1,000-watt daytimer in his hometown of Enterprise, Alabama. After 2 years of electronics school, he began working for the NBC affiliate in Montgomery. Throughout his career, he has built numerous radio and television studio and transmitter facilities. He retired as Assistant Director of Engineering for Cumulus Broadcast, a job he held for 10 years. He is chair of the Alabama EAS Committee and serves on the AMBER Task Force for the state. He has also worked for the Auburn Network for over 20 years, handling on-site engineering duties at all Auburn football games. Wilkins designed and supervised the installation of the Alabama Digital Satellite Network that distributes regional sports broadcast in the Southeast. He has served on the SBE National Board of Directors and serves on the SBE Certification Committee. He holds a Certified Professional Broadcast Engineer designation, AM Directional, and Certified Broadcast Network Technology certifications. So without further ado, Larry Wilkins.
All right, thank you very much. As you can sort of see, I've been around a pretty good while. Somebody asked me one time how long I had been in the business, and I jokingly told them I think the first remote they ever did was at the parting of the Red Sea. So I've been involved quite a bit. We want to talk today about the chief operator rules. This has been in effect a good while, and we've always had some questions come up about what is the chief operator, who is the chief operator, and exactly what are the duties of the chief operator. Now, he doesn't have to be the actual engineer of the station. It can be, and quite often the chief operator is the engineer of the station. But the chief operator's responsibilities, as you see, as we'll go through the seminar today, is actually just reviewing and making sure that everything is working the way that it's supposed to be, and you're complying. There are a couple of requirements, and that here is actually the rule that's in the FCC Rules and Regulations, Part 73. It actually says that the licensee of each AM, FM, TV, and Class A broadcast station must designate a person to serve as the station's chief operator. You also have to have an alternate chief operator in case you're on vacation or out sick or whatever. This has to be, you have to have somebody listed on that to operate in case you're out for some reason. Two requirements to be a chief operator are if you work for a station that's an AM that's directional, or maybe an AM that's operating more than 10,000 watts, or of a TV station, it is required that you be an employee of the station. So if you work for any of these, a directional AM or a non-directional AM that's operating with more than 10 kilowatts authorized power, or the TV station, you do have to be an employee of that station. Now, not for any particular hour, but you actually have to be a legitimate employee for that station. The other situation is you can be a contract engineer if you're working for an AM that's non-directional, or if the AM is under 10,000 watts, or an FM station. There you can either be an employee or you can be engaged to serve on a contract basis. And there are a lot of stations, as we know, that have contract engineers. So if it's a non-directional AM or an AM operating under 10 kilowatts or an FM station, then you can serve as a chief operator. What is required there at the station is there must be a designation of who the chief operator is. And this is just a little synopsis here of what you type up. There's no particular form that you use, but you actually just type something up, or the general manager normally does, types this up and says effective whatever date happens to be. The designated chief operator for station WXXX is Sam Smith, the name of this. And in the absence of the chief operator, then you have some other person that's the alternate, and that's where you would put their name, and then it's signed by the general manager. And what will normally happen is, in the past, you were supposed to post that with the station license, wherever that happened to be. Now, as most engineers are aware, the posting of the station license has actually gone away in the last few months. You no longer have to physically post the station license on the wall or wherever you happen to keep it. Some people actually kept it in the public file, which is actually the best way to do it. So what we always suggest now that the posting rule and requirement has gone away, that you can take the chief operator designation, and if you go on the online public file, and later on in the presentation today, we'll take a quick look at the online public file. But if you notice up here, there's actually, when you go into the public file, right in here is where the station license is actually listed. Here's the station authorization, and over here you see the renewal authorization. There's a little subfolder called additional documents. This is a really good place to put things like the chief operator designation. You can put your STL licenses in there. If you have any translators, that can go in there. It's just another subfolder. You have to remember that the way the online public file operates is identical to the way the paper file did, in that you had folders and subfolders. So this is just a subfolder that you can put other information in. So we always recommend that when you actually write up the designation of the chief operator, just scan it and put it in that additional documents folder. That way it doesn't get lost, and it's theoretically right where the commission likes to have it, which is posted with the station license. Your job as a chief operator is basically rather simple. It's just to ensure that the station is operating technically according to all FCC rules and regulations. Now, I said pretty simple. That involves quite a bit, but it's not that you have to actually do the work. You're just checking to make sure that everything is falling into the line the way it's supposed to be. That includes inspections and calibrations of the transmission system, any required monitors that need to be adjusted or calibrated, control systems and other metering systems, and of course any necessary repairs or adjustments where indicated. Let's see, I think I see somebody that actually brought up a question here. Let's see, are there any special designation requirements for LPFMs? No, there's not any requirements to have a chief operator for an LPFM at this time. You do have somebody to make sure everything is working okay, but you don't have to have a chief operator designation for LPFMs. So I hope that answered that question okay. And let's move right along here. When you're doing the inspections and calibrations, and it's not, as I said earlier, it's not really necessary that you are actually doing the inspections and calibrations. You're just making sure that it's being done. You're sort of, now if you're the engineer and also the chief operator, then those two go hand in hand. But if the chief operator is somebody like maybe the program director or the operations manager that's actually checking to make sure these things are being done, they're not actually required to do the actual work. They just have to make sure that it's being done. So that's a good way. I actually had an inspector, an FCC inspector, mentioned to me one day. He says, I would rather see somebody that was not the engineer be the chief operator. And I questioned him why that was so. And he said, well, not that a engineer would sort of put things down on the log and not have checked them yet, but it just gives another set of eyes to help, so you don't have anything that goes amiss. Here's the main part of the chief operator's responsibilities, and that is once a week, you have to review the station logs to make sure that everything that you're responsible for is being done. And we'll go through these individually here in a few minutes. Years ago, as you guys that have been in the business very long know, we used to have transmitter logs where you had to make meter readings of the transmitter site, transmitter itself, and It used to be back when I started, back in the good old days, you had to make meter readings about every 30 minutes, and then it went to an hour, and then it went to 3 hours. And finally, the commission did away with that requirement entirely. Now, I never tell a station that when I also do the ABIP inspections in the state, and I never tell a station that's actually doing these readings to stop, because as engineers know, that's a good idea to take a look at the transmitter quite often. It's just that the commission doesn't require you to create a log of transmitter readings and keep them for any period of time. What they do require is that you have a station log, and it will have the pertinent information on there that you need to cover. And here are the 3 things that will show up on the station log, and I have a sample station log that we'll put up on the screen shortly. You need to have a written indication of all information that is required for EAS operation. And we'll go through each one of these in just a couple of minutes. The second thing that you have to have on a station log is information concerning any malfunction of the tower lights. The question comes up, do we have to put down when we check them every day? Because the actual rule, as most of you know, is that you have to inspect your tower or observe the tower lights once every 24 hours. Now, that's either by visual or by some remote control system that you are checking them, unless you have installed an automatic system, and that automatic system will actually notify the engineer that there's been a failure of the tower lights. If you have an automatic system, then you are released from having to check them every 24 hours. So the information that you have to put on your station log is not that you check the lights every 24 hours, but only information concerning any kind of malfunction of the tower lights itself. So if you have a flashing light that's out, a beacon light, then, and you can't get it corrected within 30 minutes, you do have to make a notation on the station log, as well as contacting the FAA, which will look at that as well. And then the third thing, there's 3 things that go on the station log. And the third thing is information concerning the transmission system failures and or repairs or calibrations. If your transmitter's off for any length of time, or you've had failure in anything that would affect the on-the-air signal, then this is information that you're supposed to put on the station log. Now, you review these once a week to make sure they are up to date and everything is working properly. Normally what I see people do is, since especially the EAS equipment normally goes Saturday to Sunday, they actually do the inspection on Monday when they come in, and review the log at that time. And then you can sign off. The other big thing about the station log is that you do have to sign off on it, date and sign that you have inspected it and made any information that's necessary. And let's see, I think we have another question here. If I can move my screen over. Does this apply to all entities on the tower, or just, well, my little screen here, let me pull it out so I can see it. Oh, here we go. Does this apply to all entities on the tower, or just the tower owner for lighting notification? If you are a renter, if you're just renting space on somebody else's tower, the actual owner of the tower is responsible for the tower lights. And he should make all the necessary repairs and notice to the FAA that there's been a problem. That being said, he should give you an indication if it's a cell company that you're renting from, or another company that you're renting tower space from. Although it's not written anywhere, he should give you a notice, an email or something, that there is a problem with the tower lights and the FAA has been noticed. So you can make a notation in your station log of that fact. Now, I have heard the commission make some comments about that situation, that if you are renting space on a tower and there's a problem with the tower, safety problem, like tower lights being out, or the tower has not been painted in a long time, and you notice that and you notify him just in case he didn't know it, you notify him of the failure, and he doesn't do anything about it, and it goes on for a long time, there is a good possibility that the renter, even though you're a renter, could be held liable with the FCC for a notice of apparent liability. So if you see something that's out on the tower light, or the painting is not correct, then you need to notify the owner of the tower and make sure you keep all this documented, so that if he doesn't do anything and the FCC comes in and talks to you because you're a renter, you can show him all the documentation on that. Another question here is, the middle beacon has 2 lights. Do I need to inform the FAA that one is out? Yes, because that actually changed the illuminance coming off of that particular beacon. If you're talking about an incandescent, I suppose, an incandescent typically has 2 bulbs, 200, 600 watt bulbs in there. And if one goes out, it's no longer the correct amount of luminance that it's supposed to be. So you do have to notify the FAA that one of them is out. And one other question here, the station logs required to be on paper, or can they be computerized? They can be kept computerized. As a matter of fact, the station log that we'll show you here in a few minutes, although it's a manual or can be kept on paper, you can actually just transfer the information electronically. You can cut and paste it from your Sage or your index. So it is allowed to do that. The reason you can't use the actual log that's in the EAS box itself, there is no way to actually physically date and sign that you inspected it. So the commission requires that you have some way to date and sign that you checked that it was working correctly. And whether that's a manual log or a electronic way that you copy and paste it over from the EAS unit, that doesn't matter. It can be done anyway. So hope that answered those questions. So let's look a little bit more about the station log and the different things that you have to keep up with. And as we mentioned, the EAS is one of the main ones. And right now there are a couple of companies that are making EAS equipment. We know Sage Index has been around for a good while, since digital came out, and you see more of those around than any of the others. Monroe Electronics, who is actually the manufacturer of the DASDAC, you see a good number of those around, primarily with television stations. Now, let's go back just a second to the Sage Digital, and some of you probably already got the email last night from Sage, and I went ahead and put this in because I thought it was very important. They have a new firmware, firmware number 89.34. It's up on their website. It was actually placed on the site last night, I think. And that is required to be updated into your Sage. It's a free update from Sage, as has all the updates been free ever since they've been making it. What this is for is the FCC has actually changed their requirements in Part 11 that has to do with EAS. And this has to do with the timing, the start time or the origination time of an actual alert. The rules now require that the index or any EAS box reject any messages where the start time is more than 15 minutes in the future. And this is to sort of help block any kind of hacking into the index or to the DASDAC to keep that from happening. So this upgrade that has to be done there, I think the rule actually goes into effect August the 12th, according to the FCC rules. And so this update has to do with that. Now, along with the update, while you're in there doing the update, double check your clock in the Sage unit. Now, I know we're talking about chief operator, but so many of the engineers are chief operators. That's why I wanted to bring this to your attention. Plus the regular chief operator should make sure that it's being done as well. But while you're in the index, upgrading the software, and I did 3 or 4 this morning before the call for some stations, and I think it took about 2 or 3 minutes. There's no big deal. But you need to check the clock and make sure that it is correct. Now, hopefully you've got the NTP server set up to lock it to a time server, either NOAA one or NTP, or if you have a corporate time server, make sure that it's on there. But verify that on the screen it is correct. I've been to a number of stations where the clock for some reason is off, even though they are syncing to a NTP server. So just make sure that it's correct. Also, make sure you got the right time zone. From time to time, I'll go into a station on an inspection and find they're in the wrong time zone. They have it set for Eastern. Here in Alabama, they'll have it set for Eastern instead of Central. So with this new rule that the FCC has issued, if it's any more than 15 minutes off or in the future, then the INDEC is going to just disregard any alert that comes down. So you need to upgrade that. At the same time, if you did read the service bulletin that came down from SAGE last night, and I'll mention this just in passing, in September, there will be another update, sort of a major update this time, that has to do with FEMA and FEMA's issuing of the IPAWS test and IPAWS alerts. And this is another security feature that they're putting in there. As a result, SAGE has indicated that there will be a charge for this update. And up until now, all the updates have been offered from SAGE at no cost, but they're actually going to charge for this update. It's the $349 one time only. And I know, some station managers may get a little upset, but if you stop and think about it, they've been offering it for over 7 years free, all the updates. So if you divide $349 by 7, that's only like $50 a year to have free software all these many years. So that will be coming up in September. So pay attention to that and make sure that your people really know that. Somebody asked about 300 per unit. Yeah, if you've got more than one SAGE index, that's my understanding, and that may be different for if you're. I know one station here has 7. They have 7 stations, and they have a separate index for each one. Now, they didn't address that in their email that they sent out, but we can check on that and find out. Somebody asked also, do I need to save duplicate alerts or just the original alert? Just the original alert. Quite often, I tell stations that it's a good idea if you want to sort of keep up with it, to see how well you're receiving tests from all the sources. You can make a little note down in the at the bottom, that you received. Maybe it's like a monthly test, or maybe the IPAWS test, and you got it from the CAP server originally, but you also got duplicates from your 2 monitor sources. Personally, I like to write that down that way I know that everything's working the way it's supposed to. It's not required, but it's just a good way to keep up with your other sources as well. So keep that in mind, that there is a firmware update that you need to get to it. I noticed this morning, once it came out, we sent a bulletin out to all the engineers in Alabama, and I was seeing them updating, because we can monitor a lot of the stations in Alabama, and the people are updating quite rapidly, and it doesn't take but 2 or 3 minutes to do it, so it's not a big deal. It also puts the information in there about Blue Alert. Some states are running Blue Alert, and all the other certificates that needs to be in there. So let's move along and talk about what you're actually looking at. When you look at the EAS log, this is what you're looking at as a chief operator to make sure that it is correct. One is that you received a weekly test from both of your assigned monitor sources. Now, these monitor assigned sources are actually assigned by your state emergency communications committee, and is part of your state plan. So whoever you have listed as your monitor source, the 2, then you have to make sure that you received a required monthly test from both of those, as well as the IPAWS message that comes down on Mondays. At 11 o'clock local time, FEMA always issues the IPAWS test, so you have to make a notation that you received that one as well. The second thing that you're looking at, and this is just an icon here from IPAWS, that one comes down at 11 o'clock a.m. On Mondays, 11 o'clock local time. The second thing that you're looking at on the EAS log and transferring over to your station log is that your station is also required to send their own weekly test. And this has to be on all secondary audio and video streams. If you're a radio station and you're running HD and you have some sub-channels, HD2 or HD3, then you have to make sure that it runs on those as well. Doesn't have to be at the same time that it runs on the main channel, but it does have to run on those as well. If you're a television station and you're running a .2 or 3 or 4 or however many that you're running, you actually have to run the required weekly test on those as well. Your .1, which is your primary channel in TV, and your HD1 and HD radio, of course, will be the main channel anyway, so it will get those, but you do have to make sure that you log those as well. Each month, a state agency normally runs a required monthly test, and this will be ran at random dates and random times, or some states have actual scheduled times that they run them. And this is the only test, the required weekly test is not required to be relayed, but this one is required to be relayed within a 60-minute window. This actually came about when we got started years ago. You had to relay it within 15 minutes. And we tried in Alabama, we tried to run it about 17 minutes after the hour, so it would fit into the bottom of the hour break with TV stations, which never worked. So we petitioned, or the SBE and the NAB petitioned the commission to open that window up. So now you have 60 minutes to relay that monthly test. You receive it in from IPAWS, and then within 60 minutes, you have to make sure that it's relaying it. So you as the chief operator, when you are reviewing the log, you have to make sure that you did receive it and that you did relay it within that time. Question here, if we receive an RWT from a source, would forwarding it cover our weekly test requirements? No, you have to originate your own, not one that you receive from somebody else. So you have to physically originate a weekly test yourself. On the monthly test, the week that the monthly test is going to be aired and distributed through your station, you do not have to do a local weekly test yourself on that week. Now you can, and most stations do just because they have it in their system, and that's okay. It's just that you don't have to the week that you do the monthly test. But the weekly test, yes, you actually have to do that on your same. A couple of other questions here we'll get to right quick, like if you rebroadcast your primary channel on a different frequency, HD2, on a different frequency, HD2, on a different station, do you have to log its own EAS for the HD2, meaning double sending, basically? I think I know what you're talking about, but some stations actually will lease their HD2 and HD3 out to another entity, and you either have to route it through a multi-station relay for you to do it, or most often whoever you lease that HD2 or HD3 station or sub-channel to will put in their own HD in their programming chain, because it normally comes from somewhere else. So I hope that answered the question. If not, resend it now, we'll readjust it. Does relaying a severe weather or any other alert fulfill the RWT? Not per the FCC rules. It actually says you must originate your own required weekly test. Now, I've heard some discussions about that, but if you read the rules right by the way it's written, it has to be an RWT, because not all stations carry weather, and the weather service is not actually part of daisy chain from Washington anyway. So to be accurate, you need to actually originate your own required test. Another quick question: if we're running multiple stations, can the EAS log for both stations be compliant? Yes, it can be combined into one log. If you have one index or one DAS deck that's feeding all the stations, you can create one log as long as you have the information, the call letters and all for each one of them. Do we have to forward RWTs? No, you're not required to forward an RWT, just a required monthly test. So when you set your unit up in the configuration, there's a place where you can select automatic relay, time ignored, and one that says log only. So your RWT filter, when you set that up in your unit, you just click on log only, so you do not have to relay an RWT. And one other question: will this webinar be available on the website? Yes, I think they're recording it now, so it will be available, I think, in a few days, actually, on the website there of the station. All right, let's see, where are we here? We'll get back to our PowerPoint. And a reminder, while we're talking about all of these different things that you have to review, the National EAS test, the NPT, National Periodic Test, is actually scheduled for Wednesday, August the 7th, 2019 at 2:20 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So you will actually receive a test. This will have to be relayed. You receive it and relayed immediately, not 60 seconds. It has to be relayed immediately, just like a regular alert. Now, one difference in this year's test compared to the last few years that we have done the annual test, in the past, the test, you received it from your CAP server, your IPAW server coming in via the internet. This year, FEMA has decided to test the PEP system, the primary entry point system, which comes by another mode of distribution, because IPAWS actually comes down via the internet. And if something happens and we have a disaster, the internet may go down. And so they want to test the secondary system, which is the PEP network. So you will not get any NPT data in from your CAP server on August the 7th. It will be only through the PEP system, meaning that your two required monitor sources, that's where you'll actually get it. This is why we stress to all the stations to double check their monitor sources, make sure that they are actually the ones listed in the state plan for them, and that it's working, and that the audio is broadcast quality. So many stations have audio that's not very good, so you need to make sure you do whatever you need to do to clean that up. But as the chief operator, this is something you're watching for, to make sure that particular week, you need to make sure that you see that on the log, that they received it, and it relayed it, and make a notation of that in your actual station log. You should also have a copy of the EAS National Handbook. That's available on the web from the FCC. You can just simply Google EAS Operating Handbook, and it'll be there for you to download. It's also a good idea to have access. You don't necessarily have to have it in hand, but have access to the state plan of whatever state that you happen to be in, just in case you need to refer back to it as far as monitor assignments and anything like that. All right, any other questions about EAS? Oh, here's another question about EAS. Do we have to log severe weather alerts and amber alerts on the EAS log? You do not have to log severe weather alerts, nor do you have to log amber alerts, because they're not actually required. The only thing that is required by the FCC is the testing, the RWT and the RMT and the RWT that you get from IPAWS, and any national alert, EAN, emergency alert notifications. That's the only thing that's required to be logged. The amber alerts, weather alerts, blue alerts, civil emergencies from the governor's office, although you want to do those as a good public service and to serve your community, you don't necessarily have to put those on the log. It's a good thing to do, so you can just keep up with it. So if somebody comes in, they can see that you've been, the commission comes in, they can see that you've been doing it. But no, you don't actually have to put those in there. So let's talk a little bit about the second thing on our list that you as a chief operator has to observe and make sure that it's correct. And that is the information concerning any kind of problem with the tower lights. And I've actually got a form that you will bring up here and let you see it. And let me get over here to where I can bring it up so you guys can see it, that you have to use to send to the FAA about a tower light malfunction. This actually will show you what you have to do when you call the FAA. As you can see, this is a obstruction tower light report, and it allows you to, you can pre-fill out this top part, the height of the tower, the nearest airport, the tower registration number, type of structure, and the actual location as far as the latitude and longitude. Now, on down further, you can actually see where if you have an outage, you call this number here. This is the 800 number, 877-487-6867, to report that you do have an outage. And they will give you a NOTAM number, as you see down here, and you are supposed to place that there. That indicates that you have notified the FCC or the FAA that you have a flashing light or a problem with all the lights. Here's a actual place where you tell them it's either all the lights are out, just the top light, or any other flashing light. And don't forget to get the initials right here. You see, get the initials of the FAA specialist taking the report. So you as a chief operator need to make sure that if there was a malfunction to the tower lights, that you need to go in and make sure that's on the station log so you can actually keep up with it. We'll go a little bit further here on the, oh, we went the wrong way, didn't we? Let's go this way. The tower light inspection, you have to, once a quarter, make sure that you have checked the tower lights system to make sure it's operating correctly. The engineer, or if you're the engineer, that's simply done by going out to the tower and either simulating a failure or covering up the photocell with a paper bag or whatever, and make the lights come on and make sure that everything is feeding back correctly. So as a chief operator, you want to make sure that they're doing that and that it's actually on the log. Also, you need to check that once a quarter. That's what that's for there. Part 1747 says that you do have to check those things once a quarter and log that you have checked them. The third item that you as a chief operator, and this is the third the third item of three that you have to make sure is on the log, is to ensure that the transmission system is operating with all the parameters. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to, if you're not the engineer, that doesn't mean that you have to go out and do it, but it means that you get the engineer to tell you that, or show you by various logs that everything is working okay. You can actually do that, and we'll look real quickly here, and we don't want to run out of time, but let's go over here and show you a station license. If you've never seen a station license, and some you'd be surprised, there's actually some engineers I've run into that's never looked at the station license. But on the station license, it will actually show you the power output of the transmitter and the latitude and longitude and information about the antenna. So you just need to make sure that there's been no malfunctions that would cause any of these situations here, especially the power output, to be out of tolerance. And if it is, it needs to be actually put on the station log so you can go on from there. That way you're testing that the system is actually working correctly. We have seen some licenses, by the way, if you look on it, where it's supposed to have what the transmitter output power, that is blank. Not sure how that gets through the commission, but somehow or another, some of the licenses get out that doesn't have that, the output power or the type of antenna. The engineer's responsible to find out what that's supposed to be, either by looking back in the applications or getting with the consultant that filed your application for a license and find out what that's supposed to be. Now, you can actually figure it yourself with formulas, and if you need information on how to do that, you can actually contact an engineer in your state or contact me, and I'll be happy to show you actually how to do that. But that's something that we really need to know. And you as a chief operator, when you're checking, you're ascertaining that your transmitter is operating at the correct the actual EAS unit, whether it's a SAGE or whether it is a DASDEC, will actually have a log that it generates, and I assume that all of you have probably seen those. And I was looking to see, I think I have a copy of one. No, that's the license. Now, I don't think I have a copy of that one available right now, but we've all seen your logs, and this is what you're supposed to check to make sure that everything is correct the way that it's supposed to be. And that way you can fill it out so it would be accurate. Any questions about that? We'll move on. The event log, that's where you check that on your actual unit itself. The station log, now that's what I really want to show you, what a sample station log that we came up with. And if your station would like to use this, here's a copy of it. And let's bring it up right here, and so you can take a look at it. Here's a station log that we created. And here's a place to put the station call or multiple stations if you have multiple stations in the month of the year. This is actually a log that can be kept for an entire month. If you notice, the first section up here is a place where you can actually put who you received the monthly test from, the date and time, and when you relayed it. Typically, all stations do this manually at the same time, so it just runs right after you receive it. The middle portion of the station log allows you to have your two monitor sources listed. We went ahead and put the IPAWS, since that is required. So your monitor 1, your monitor 2, and when you're looking on your log, you can just copy over to this the date and time that you got a weekly test. Or as I said earlier, you can copy and paste it if you wish. And this gives you a place for 5 weeks, total of 5 weeks in the month. And the last area down here is where you actually ran your own weekly test, the different weeks of the month, the date, and the time, so you can keep up with it. And then the most important thing is down here, if you have tower light malfunctions or transmission failures, this is where you can put that information in. But the most important part is down here where you date and sign that you did check the log. So you can at a easy moment just look and see whether you're missing any. You missed some. If you missed a weekly test from a same station in like 2 weeks in a row, you need to contact that station and make sure that, well, first of all, check and make sure your equipment's working. But secondly, to check and make sure that they didn't have a problem and are just forgetting it. So the online public file, if you haven't looked at the online public file, I urge you to go and look at the new online public file. It's very easy to navigate. It's just like your paper file there that you used to have at the station. That will get you familiar with what's supposed to be in there. Now, normally that's not part of the chief operator, but the more you know about what you're supposed to have at your station, the better it will be. So here's a couple of takeaway points. And that is, your job is to assure that the station is operating in accordance with all FCC rules and regulations. And secondly, that it's operating within the parameters that are listed on your station authorization. A couple of questions here that we'll address, and let's get over to those. We had, how far back should you save these logs? The station log needs to be kept for 2 years. So if you have any older than 2 years, you can throw those away. A sample log will be available. Yes, I will send that to the MAB and they can post it on their website. And you're welcome to use it. It's something several states are already using it, and we came up with it because it saves paper. You can put a month's worth of station logs on one piece of paper, or you can actually do it, as I said, electronically by using copy and paste over to it. So with that, I think that sort of covers everything that we had. If anybody else has any questions, we'll be happy to handle those. If you have a question, my contact information is there. Simply lwilkins@al-ba.com and phone number, and that's our ABA website. Now, if you go to that ABA website, www.al-ba.com, that station log is on that website. When you go to the website, click on the EAS tab, and you'll see in there sample station log, and you're welcome to download it from that. Plus, I'll make it available through MAB as well. Another question, does the FCC still require hourly transmitter readings, and do the master control operators have to sign on and off? No, there are, you no longer have to make transmitter readings, and as a result, there's no log for the operator to sign on and off, so there's no place for that to happen. I will say that on the station log, when you're assigning it weekly, you have to sign your entire name, not just initials. That was always true even with the back when we had transmitter logs. You could not sign it with your initials unless you had your signature posted somewhere on the log itself. But to answer that question, no, you don't have to make transmitter readings anymore, and the master control operator does not have to sign on. Is there any requirements for TV stations to keep paper public file available? No. All the public files have gone away. Television stations went up on the online file several years ago. Last year is when the top 50 radio stations went up online. And then a little bit later, all the remaining radio stations are up online. So all the public files are supposed to be online. And I encourage you to look at yours. It's a simple procedure to go over. The website, if you want to make a note of it, it's just public files with an S, publicfiles.fcc.gov, publicfiles.fcc.gov. And there you will see a place where you type a call letter in, and it will take you directly to that station's public file, and you can see everything that's been placed up there. So that will give you a good indication. Does the political information need to be retained in a paper form? No, everything has to be up on the public file. Now, a lot of stations do, because of the time factor in getting that up online. If a client, comes in that wants to look at something that somebody else ran and you don't have it up on there in a timely manner, then a lot of people do keep those locally during the political season. But everything should be up on the online public file. Where in the Sage do you verify the time? When you go into the configuration menu on the Sage, there is right on the front page, there's actually a place where you can click on where you're setting the time zone, and also another page or two down. I don't have one in front of me right now, but another page or two down in there will actually be where you can set the time server setup. So I hope that answered the question. All right, if there's no other questions, we appreciate your time, and make sure you contact us.
Let's hang in just a moment longer if anybody has
Okay.
any other questions here. Somebody raised their hand, but if you have any questions at the last minute here for Larry, use the Q&A button on the webinar software here, and he'll be glad to answer the questions. Michigan will be making this recording available to the other states on the call, and within the next day, certainly by Monday, we'll be mailing out the URL to the YouTube recording of this webinar. And I think there is one question down there below.
Yeah, I see it. Are we required to do annual voluntary FCC inspections? You're not required to, but I strongly urge you to do that. Every state has what's called the Alternative Broadcast Inspection Program, the ABIP program, and every state broadcast association has a contract with the FCC to conduct these. And it's actually really a nice situation where it's a good insurance policy, because once the inspector comes in and inspects your station and signs off on it, then the FCC grants you a 3-year immunity from any surprise visit. They will come by for any safety violations or complaints on your station, but not just stop by and knock on the door and say, hello, I'm from the FCC. So I encourage you to do that. And the other thing that's valuable about the ABIP inspection is that it gives another set of eyes at looking at things that maybe that you didn't do on purpose, but maybe you overlooked it or did it not exactly right. So it's a really good thing. So contact your association about their ABIP program. Let's see, just to double check, if we are renting space on a tower, the owner of the tower is required to monitor the tower lights. Move this over so I can see it. Is there an issue with the tower? Yeah, we talked about that briefly, that if there's an issue with the tower, either lighting or painting, and the owner does not correct that problem, then you could be held liable. I have heard of that happening. Not very often, but they can come back on the renters if the owner. So you really need to pay attention to that and make sure you document all of that. Is there a tower light failure required on the form? Yes, we'll make that available. It's not on the ABA website, but we'll make it available so they can put it on the MAB. And same thing. And then, is the chief operator directly involved in the SB voluntary inspection or inspection from the FCC? When I go in to do an inspection, that's one of the first things I look at is the station log. If the chief operator is available, then I'll go over with him. If not, whoever keeps the log, I can take a look at it there. But I assume you mean, does he have to go around during the inspection? No. I just make sure that he's logging everything. And if he's not, then I need to talk to him and make sure that he knows what's supposed to be on there. Oh, we have another one too. If I rebroadcast the primary station on another frequency, HD2, do I need to keep a separate log for HD2, or should I modify my primary EAS to read HD2? Yeah, if you're renting, I see what you're talking about now. You're renting another, I assume that you're renting another HD2 and you're feeding the EAS. Now, if your primary station is going over HD2, then it's going to have the information on it. But I would include that on your station log, and because he actually rented that to you, and he's not responsible for it. So my answer would be to keep it on your log, since you're renting it from him. If I find something different, I'll notify the MAB, and they can post it on their stuff. Is it acceptable to let the EAS alerts go on the internet stream? Sure. Most stations don't. Most stations stream actually takes place prior to EAS equipment, but there is no problem with running it over the stream, as far as I know.
Okay, well, I guess that's it. Larry, thank you for a wonderful presentation today.
All right, thank you very much. I enjoyed it, and have anybody need any more information, just drop me an email or give me a call.
Very good. And again, we'll be sharing a recording of this in the days to come, and we'll try to include all those forms with the recording too. So everybody have a good day, and thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Thank you.